The sound of keyboards clicking frantically echoes through Silicon Valley boardrooms as executives scramble to understand what just happened. Subscribe now, and hit that notification bell because what I'm about to reveal will change everything you thought you knew about the global AI race. At exactly 3:47 a.m. Pacific Time on January 20th, 2025, a small Chinese startup called DeepSeek quietly released something that would shake the foundations of American technological supremacy. While most Americans were sleeping, China had just fired the opening shot in what many are now calling AI War 3. The weapon? A revolutionary artificial intelligence model called R1 that performs at the same level as OpenAI's most advanced systems. But here's the terrifying part. It was built for less than $6 million. To put that in perspective, American companies are spending hundreds of millions, sometimes billions, to achieve similar results. Within hours of its release, DeepSeek's app rocketed to #1 on Apple's App Store, surpassing ChatGPT and leaving American AI companies scrambling for answers. The model demonstrated capabilities that Silicon Valley executives thought were impossible given China's limited access to advanced computing hardware due to US sanctions. DeepSeek stunned global observers by releasing its R1 model trained for what the company claimed was just $5.6 million on approximately 2,000 NVIDIA H800 GPUs, while comparable Western models required significantly more compute power and capital investment. The genius behind DeepSeek's breakthrough lies in their innovative approach to artificial intelligence reasoning. The model employs a chain-of-thought approach similar to that used by ChatGPT, which lets it solve problems by processing queries step by step. But unlike its American counterparts, R1 was designed from the ground up to work efficiently with the limited hardware available to Chinese companies. This efficiency wasn't born from desperation, it was born from necessity and brilliant engineering. While American companies had unlimited access to the most advanced chips, Chinese researchers had to innovate their way around restrictions, ultimately creating something more elegant and cost-effective than anything produced in Silicon Valley. The morning of January 27, 2025, will be remembered as Black Monday for American AI stocks. NVIDIA, the chip giant that had become synonymous with AI dominance, watched helplessly as its stock price plummeted 17% in a single day. The company that had been riding high on AI demand suddenly faced the terrifying reality that efficient Chinese models might not need their expensive hardware after all. Despite the Chinese startup's emergence causing the chipmaker's stock price to plunge 17% on Monday, NVIDIA called DeepSeek's R1 model an excellent AI advancement, a diplomatic response that barely concealed the panic spreading through their executive offices. Meta, Microsoft and Google all saw their valuations take massive hits as investors suddenly questioned whether American companies' massive spending on AI infrastructure was actually necessary. If a small Chinese startup could achieve comparable results for a fraction of the cost, what did that mean for the billions being invested by tech giants? The shockwaves extended beyond individual companies to the entire American tech ecosystem. Venture capitalists who had been pouring money into AI startups suddenly found themselves questioning whether their investments were based on inflated cost assumptions. DeepSeek demonstrated AI models that offer comparable performance to the world's best chatbots at seemingly a fraction of their development cost. Behind the scenes, intelligence agencies were asking even more troubling questions. How had China managed to build such advanced AI capabilities despite years of export restrictions on semiconductors? The answer revealed a sophisticated network of technological innovation that had been operating under America's radar. Chinese researchers had been quietly developing new training techniques that maximized efficiency while minimizing hardware requirements. They had created novel architectures that could extract more performance from less powerful chips, essentially turning America's sanctions into a catalyst for innovation rather than a barrier. The most unsettling revelation came from analyzing DeepSeek's technical papers. The model's development team said they had spent less than $6 million on computing power to train the model, using less advanced and fewer computer chips than employed by tech giants in the United States. This wasn't just impressive, it was a complete paradigm shift that challenged every assumption about AI development costs. Security experts began connecting the dots, realizing that China's approach represented more than just cost savings. By developing AI systems that required less computational power, they had potentially solved one of the biggest barriers to widespread AI deployment: energy consumption and infrastructure requirements. The implications were staggering. While American companies were building massive data centers and consuming enormous amounts of electricity, China had potentially found a way to democratize AI access through efficiency. This meant their technology could be deployed faster, cheaper, and in environments where American solutions simply weren't practical. The response from Washington was swift, but honestly, it revealed just how unprepared America really was. Emergency meetings were called at the Pentagon, the Department of Commerce, and the National Security Council. Officials who had been so confident that semiconductor sanctions would slow China's AI progress suddenly found themselves scrambling, trying to understand how their strategy had backfired so spectacularly. China wants to become the global leader in artificial intelligence by the year 2030. Beijing is deploying industrial policy tools across the full AI technology stack, from chips to applications. What American policymakers hadn't anticipated was just how effectively China would turn adversity into advantage. The Biden administration's export controls, designed to limit China's access to advanced semiconductors, had, maybe unintentionally, created the perfect conditions for Chinese innovation. Faced with limitations, Chinese researchers developed fundamentally more efficient approaches that American companies with their nearly unlimited budgets and hardware access had never really needed to consider. Congress immediately called for hearings, with lawmakers demanding explanations from tech executives and intelligence officials. How had America's most closely guarded technological advantage been not just matched but potentially surpassed by a startup that most people had never even heard of 6 months earlier? The military implications were perhaps the most concerning. If China could develop advanced AI systems with minimal hardware requirements, it meant their military applications could be deployed more widely and, honestly, more covertly. Traditional American advantages in computing infrastructure suddenly seemed a lot less relevant in a world where efficiency trumped raw computational power. So, 2025 has been proof that China is highly competitive in the artificial intelligence field, if not actually the frontrunner. China's open-source models are really testing US AI dominance. American intelligence assessments that had, consistently underestimated Chinese AI capabilities were being hastily revised as analysts realized they had been measuring the wrong metrics entirely. The race was no longer about who could build the biggest, most powerful AI systems. It was about who could build the smartest, most efficient ones. And in that race, China had just taken a commanding lead that would be difficult for America to overcome. Silicon Valley's response revealed just how deep the crisis really was. Companies that had been valued in the hundreds of billions based on their AI capabilities suddenly faced some existential questions. If a Chinese startup could achieve comparable results for, honestly, just pennies on the dollar, what justified their massive valuations and development budgets? Venture capital firms began conducting emergency reviews of their AI portfolios. Startups that had raised hundreds of millions based on exclusive access to expensive hardware suddenly found their competitive advantages evaporating. The entire economic model underlying America's AI boom was being challenged by Chinese efficiency. DeepSeek R1 performs reasoning tasks at the same level as OpenAI's O1, and it's open for researchers to examine. China's cheap OpenAI model DeepSeek really thrills scientists. This open-source approach added another layer of strategic brilliance to China's move. While American companies hoarded their AI technologies behind proprietary walls, China was accelerating global development by sharing their breakthroughs freely. The open-source nature of DeepSeek's model meant that researchers worldwide could study, improve, and build upon Chinese innovations. This collaborative approach threatened to leave American companies increasingly isolated as the global AI community rallied around Chinese platforms and methodologies. American universities found themselves in an impossible position. Their researchers wanted access to the most advanced AI tools available, which more and more meant Chinese platforms. But political pressure mounted to avoid technologies that could potentially compromise national security or academic independence. The talent war intensified as Chinese companies, flush with their recent successes, began aggressively recruiting American AI researchers. Offers of stock options and research freedom proved increasingly attractive to scientists frustrated by the corporate restrictions and political complications surrounding American AI development. Government officials realized that America's response couldn't rely solely on restrictions and sanctions. The DeepSeek breakthrough demonstrated that Chinese innovation could work around limitations, potentially emerging stronger and more focused as a result. A new strategy was needed, one that emphasized American strengths rather than Chinese weaknesses. The Pentagon announced a massive increase in AI research funding, specifically targeting efficiency and cost reduction. Military leaders had finally grasped that the future of AI warfare might depend more on deployment flexibility than raw computational power. Chinese innovations had shown that smaller, more efficient systems could potentially outmaneuver larger, more expensive ones. Technology leaders called for a Manhattan Project-style effort to regain American AI leadership. The comparison was pretty apt. Just as the original Manhattan Project responded to the threat of German nuclear capabilities, America now faced a technological challenge that required unprecedented coordination and investment. But critics pointed out a fundamental difference. The Manhattan Project succeeded partly because of America's industrial advantages and resource abundance, the same advantages that Chinese efficiency innovations had rendered less relevant in the AI competition. The economic implications extended far beyond technology companies. Industries from healthcare to transportation had been planning AI adoption strategies based on American cost models and infrastructure requirements. Chinese efficiency breakthroughs suddenly made these plans obsolete, potentially accelerating AI adoption timelines worldwide. U.S. private AI investment hit $109 billion in 2024, nearly 12 times higher than China's $9.3 billion. But DeepSeek's success raised uncomfortable questions about whether America's massive spending advantage actually mattered if China could achieve comparable results with just a fraction of the investment. The psychological impact on Silicon Valley was perhaps as significant as the economic damage. An ecosystem built on the assumption of American technological superiority suddenly confronted evidence of Chinese innovation leadership. The cultural shift required to acknowledge and respond to this new reality would be as challenging as the technical obstacles ahead. Educational institutions scrambled to adjust curricula and research priorities. Computer science departments that had focused on scaling and performance suddenly needed to emphasize efficiency and resource optimization. The skills required for AI leadership were changing faster than academic institutions could adapt. International allies watched nervously as the AI competition between America and China intensified. European leaders realized they risked being left behind entirely if they couldn't quickly choose sides or develop independent capabilities. The bipolar AI world that was emerging would force difficult decisions for countries hoping to maintain technological neutrality. As night fell on Silicon Valley that January evening, the lights in corporate offices burned brighter than usual. Emergency strategy sessions continued through the night as America's tech leaders grappled with a new reality. China hadn't just caught up in the AI race, they had potentially redefined the rules of competition entirely. The stakes couldn't be higher. Artificial intelligence represents the foundation of economic and military power for the next century. Whichever nation leads in AI will shape global governance, economic systems, and social structures. DeepSeek's breakthrough suggested that leadership was no longer America's to lose, it was China's to win. The world watches and waits to see how America will respond to this technological Pearl Harbor. Will Silicon Valley innovate its way back to leadership, or has China achieved a decisive advantage that will reshape global power for generations to come? The next moves in this high-stakes game will determine not just corporate valuations, but the balance of global power in the 21st century. Comment below, do you think America can regain its AI leadership, or has China already won this crucial technological race? Your insights could shape how we understand this pivotal moment in tech history.